Hi there, it's Vitali T, and today we'll continue our videos about chord melodies. So I decided to arrange tune My Romance by Richard Rodgers. Well, it's so mellow and nice song, so I decided to do arrangement in odd libitum tempo, which means free tempo. But if you play this in up-tempo swing or medium swing, I guess the sound will be as good as well. Let me tell you about the main structure of the song. In my opinion, we've got two parts here, and a one part and a two parts. Why call them a part? Well, because they are pretty much the same except the ending or turnaround of each part. So in every part we've got 16th measures, so first 8 measures will be in both parts exactly the same. Well, an entire song, as far as you already understand, we've got 32 measures. So let me play a straight ahead melody as it is written in any real book. So I'll start to tell you how I look on melody before I even start to arrange that song and change some chords and do some extended harmony. Well, the first half of the melody, or a one part, will be like that. Right? So we've got, as far as you hear, first half as a scale of licks, and the second half it's a very static part, right? So we've got just a few notes that repeat over and over and over. Well, the A2 part will start exactly the same but end up different. So let's hear how A part sounds alike. So, as far as you hear, here we've got a little bit more scalar runs. So I'll tell you about those runs just a little bit later. So, but first thing we need to do, if you want to play that melody in a bigger band, so if you play in a trio with drums and just a bass player, will be fine to play like that. But if you play with a keyboard player or another guitar player, I guess that won't be the best way you can do it, because you will cross with many instruments. So same thing for arranging your chord melody, like Joe Piaz says, when the lower range in your guitar, lower strings, is like a bass guitar. So right now, well, let's think about that and let's move our melody up an octave, so make sure that we not cross with that bass guitar in our instrument. So I guess if we transpose an entire melody up an octave, it will sound some kind of like that. Well, see, when it's played higher, it's kind of sound a little stronger, I guess. So when you play it higher, you just kind of know that it's the melody, right? So you can hear it a little bit more clear. And I guess if you play with somebody else, it's not disappear in the mix. So I guess if you learn any song, will be either way better to learn how to play the same melody of tune in just a different range and different positions on your guitar fretboard, so it helps you to understand the entire song better. Well, the one thing actually changed in my chord melody is that second half of the A1 part. So in originally we've got just 3 notes, so it's kind of like a repetitive phrase. What I did, I just use a little bit different concept of arrangement that I will tell you right now in a minute. So I decided to make that melody even a little bit less. So I move our lower B flat note 1 octave higher. So if we look at the entire melody and the melody were transposed up an octave, that particular note in the second half of the A1 part were transposed in 2 octaves. So when I did that, I have nothing else as just the 2 notes in the entire melody of A1 part, the second half of the A1 part, it's F and a B flat. So but it sounds very simple right now when I play just a melody, but when I play and imply that melody in a harmony with just a different chord voicings, I guess it sounds even better because right now I use the same note as a pedal tone over different chords. So well, I guess you hear that, right? So that kind of changed the actual melody a little bit, but I guess not so critical. Well, about the general concept of entire tune, I may say just a few words. So in my opinion, it's written in a relative keys in the B flat major and G minor. How can you define that? Well, because even if you look on your first melody, first part of the melody, you will see that 2 linear lines you've got, 2 scalar runs, they actually resolve in 2 different chords. The first run resolves into a B flat major, right, into a root, so right. The second run of the melody resolve into a G note, so we start on B flat, but we resolve into a G. So this is why the song is kind of written in a relative keys. I can't say that it's written in just B flat major or just G minor, so they always jumps from one to another, but difference obviously in just a few chords. Well, if you look on the second part of the melody, A2 part, you will see that at the ending we've got 2 another scalar runs, and they kind of actually extend our harmony and will tell which chord are the main one, because we've got 1 extra line that go ascending, means up. So, and we start that line on our E flat note, and it end up on D note. So why D? I don't know if you know that concept, but D minor chord, right now, it will be the closest substitution for our B flat major chord, because in jazz world, any major chord can be substituted with the minor chord started on the 3rd degree of that major. So in this case, B flat major chord, we easily can substitute with D minor. Pretty much will be the same chord. It kind of creates a B flat major 9 chord, you know. So this is why right now we are kind of back to a B flat, but just as a substituted B flat. And the last scalar round we've got here in the melody in A2 part, it's pretty much nothing else as a E flat major arpeggio that we resolve to a B flat, which is a root of our tiny chord. So B flat major actually goes to a 4th chord in that key, which is E flat major, and goes back to a B flat major. Right, so pretty much you hear that we outline more of B flat major chord than G minor. So from this point I can say that, well, the tune is written in a B flat major with some of the jump to a relative key G minor. Well, let's talk about a few concepts that I use in my arrangement. Well, the first thing that I guess we need to talk about is a tritone substitution. Well, if you like to play jazz or you hear anything about jazz theory, you already heard probably so many times a word tritone. The tritone, it's an interval that actually might be called in a classical world as a diminished fifth or augmented fourth. So which means if we simplify that, but we still stay in the key of B flat major. So if you play B flat power chord, right, our flat 5 will be just that power chord with the lowered second note, right? Or if we play a perfect fourth interval, we just need to raise it up a half step. So why we do all the intervallic ideas? Because right now we start to use that interval as a substitution. So the tritone substitution works over a dominant chord, and that means that we can substitute that chord with another dominant chord up or down that interval tritone. So in this case right now we'll take that little part of the song, I guess it's an A1 part, when we have B flat dominant 7 chord that goes to E flat major chord and goes to A flat dominant chord. So what we can do here? Well, we've got one chord that is just a major, E flat major, and we still save that chord here. We may use another voicing. I guess here I used that voicing, but I also used major 6/9 voicing. So, but instead of playing B altered dominant or B flat altered dominant, we'll do some other things. So we use our tritone substitution, and there'll be nothing else. We play a dominant 7th chord up a tritone from our B flat. Well, the tritone of B flat, the note that is tritone of B flat, will be E natural. So right now, instead of play B flat dominant or altered dominant chord, we may play E dominant 7th chord or altered 7th chord. So instead of play B flat dominant 7, we can play E natural but with altered, let's say 9th degree. Why I do 9th degree altered? Because if I'll do that kind of chord, so the whole difference in between my B flat dominant and E dominant will be just a one note, the root. So we have all the same notes, right? And right now, if B flat root, we call that chord B flat dominant. But if E note is a root, we can call that E altered dominant, which is dominant 7 flat 9. So see, the tritone substitution mainly is the same chord but with just a different bass note. In my opinion, it still saves the function of B dominant 7, B flat dominant 7th chord, which is a 5 chord of our E flat major chord. So right now it just gives us a little bit different idea or different voicing, right? So we can play just E as a tritone substitution that resolves to the E flat, right? So it's very close resolution. It's not like a 5-2-1. It's just up a half step back to 1. Right, so it's pretty cool. Well, to save that idea and just to continue with another chord, we've got here A flat dominant 7th chord, and we're going to do the same thing. We'll substitute A flat 7th with a tritone of it, and all going to be nothing else as a D dominant 7th chord, because the tritone of A flat will be D. And I'll do again D altered dominant, and I guess in my arrangement I've used dominant 7 with a flat 9 and sharp 5 because it's a part of the melody. So right now, instead of have just a very common and very kind of like useful, but you know, it's so kind of standard turnaround of just a 2-5-1 as a dominant chord to major, and it goes straight ahead to the root of another major. So it's going to be a B flat dominant going to E flat major, and right now we've got A flat dominant, which actually in song may resolve to D minor, G minor, right? So we've got C dominant, F dominant to the B flat major. Well, the sound is pretty common, right? If we do that. Not bad, right? I mean, it's nothing wrong here. It sounds great, but it doesn't work every time you play in the different situations. For example, if you play in a big band, or if you play with band with other guitar or keyboard, the kind of voicings like that doesn't work too much, because it's very big range in our chord right now here. So what can we do? We can use another voicings in the substitutions, which has led us to have a little bit better, or let's say tighter voice leading of our chords. So right now, if we do the same turn around, but instead of B flat, we're going to use E flat alternate dominant, or I'm sorry, E alternate dominant, or instead of A flat dominant, we're going to use D alternate dominant. And I will play right now only a root third and seventh of each chord. So what we have here, see how very, very close, right? It's very nice, right? It's not that wide as a, right? So, well, if I play the same motion down to a B flat with just those voicings, I mean, they called shell voicings. If you study jazz guitar, you learn any kind of like comping etudes or comping guitar stuff, so you will be familiar with those. But if I'll try to play right now with shell voicings, same chord progression, it'll be nicer, and especially for band application, if you will do just the shell voicings and with the tritone substitutions. See, right now it's going to be kind of like that. See, it's kind of cool, right? If you especially do some big band stuff like. See, it just sounds very mellow, and the chords is connected so tight, so you pretty much got a linear harmony, which is great, you know, not take too much of the space. Well, so this was about tritone substitutions. Once again, just to memorize, any dominant chord might be substituted with another dominant chord up or down tritone, which is diminished fifth or augmented fourth interval. So, I guess one more thing that deserves to just be mentioned here is the backwards 505 substitution. So, I guess if you saw my previous video about sunny chord melody, you already learned how can you substitute an altered dominant chord with fully diminished chords, and how you can substitute your dominant chord with another dominant chord going up a fifth of that chord. Well, right now we're going to do kind of similar thing, but a little bit backwards. In a song, we've got turnaround 2-5-1, which is, well, we play jazz, so you can expect to have a 2-5-1s here, over D minor chord, right? So we've got E half diminished chord, A altered dominant, going to a D minor. So right now, first thing I did here to rearrange that stuff is I did a tritone substitution that you, I guess, already know from previous chapter of that video, over A chord. So I substituted our A dominant 7th chord altered with E flat dominant 7th chord. So pretty much instead of have 2-5-1 this way, I right now got a 2-5-1 with the tritone sub. Right? So it sounds again more linear, I guess better right now. But I not stop here, I continue to rearrange and go a little crazier on it, right? So first, as far as I've got that E flat dominant 7th chord, and I actually think about that chord as an altered dominant chord with a flat 9 degree here. So pretty much if I play chords, it'll be just, well, not so bad, but I just continue and I substitute that chord with the diminished chord. So if you remember from previous video, you can substitute any diminished chord, use any diminished chord as a substitution over altered dominant chord. So and diminished chord will be up a half step from dominant chord. So if we've got here E flat altered dominant, well, we can use E natural diminished chord, and also we use all the inversions of that chord. So if we're going up, it's going to be G fully diminished chord. I'll be well, let's go even higher. So it's going to be B flat fully diminished chord. But if we're going lower from E, will be C sharp or D flat fully diminished chord. But in my arrangement, I use just the E, so it's going to be a diminished chord up a half step from our altered dominant. Right? So instead, of that E flat dominant 7th chord altered, I use E fully diminished. But now I actually think about that E flat chord and say, okay, that chord might be 5 of another dominant chord, so I just did backwards 5 of 5 substitution. And E flat dominant will be 5 chord of A flat altered dominant. Right now, I use same diminished concept over that A flat, so I can substitute my A flat dominant 7th chord with dominant or diminished, chord up a half step, which is A fully diminished, C fully diminished, E flat fully diminished, and G flat fully diminished. And actually I use that G flat fully diminished, but just an octave here. So means right now, instead of using an E flat altered dominant, I use E fully diminished, which is diminished up a half step or from flat 9 degree of that chord. And I also think about substituted A flat chord, so I substitute my E flat with the A flat chord, and I use a diminished chord from that substitution as a G flat diminished, which is flat 7th of A flat, which is right now here. That allows me to use my simple melody to do it like that. So here I did 2 chords in a 2-5-1 turnaround. It's E half diminished. I use a 11 degree on top because it's part of our melody. And now I use that diminished run and resolve to a D minor, which is pretty cool. Voicing, it's a minor with just a flat 6 and a flat 3rd. So it's the voicings that guitar players like Corey Christiansen use. He told me that voicing, and actually other great guitar players like Harvard Hine actually use this voicings a lot. So right now, once again, instead of have straight ahead 2-5-1, we've got 2 now a diminished over tritone substitution over our 5 and a diminished over backwards 5 of 5 substitution over our tritone substitution. Wow, I know it sounds crazy, but it works. This is how we have 2 diminished chords that goes up just a whole step or down a whole step. Because we know that diminished chords can invert only in minor thirds. Right, so in this case, instead our A altered dominant chord, we may use E flat altered dominant, which is tritone substitution, or A flat altered dominant, which is backwards 5 of 5 of E flat. But right now, instead of all of that, we use just the 2 diminished chords, G flat diminished and E flat diminished. Right, so once again, that part, instead of being 2-5-1 lick, will be like that. So that led me to arrange and imply the melody in my chord voicings pretty easy. So I guess try to work with that so you understand whole diminished chords. And once again, as far as we've got only 12 different notes in any scale or a chromatic scale, and we have 4 inversions of the diminished chords, which pretty much it's the same chord. Means generally in music we've got 3 different diminished chords, and right now we use 2 over our altered dominant chord. Well, it's like 66% of whole notes that we've got is pretty much will be right. Well, so I guess that's the main thing I want to tell about that chord melody. So play, let me know if you like it or not, and I guess next time we'll do something different. Well, we'll see. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I'll see you next time.